Chapter 15. I spent the first 50 years of my life in darkness. Instead of hope, I gave off hurt. Instead of peace, I spread chaos. At its worst, towards the end, I had drugs and cash and people who would do anything to gain my favor. I had women, but no love. I had power, but no joy. I had money, but no light. I knew nothing but darkness, and the darkness spread. In the year before my arrest, it became clear I was being watched. The cops would sit outside my house. They'd pick me up for anything. One time I was stopped for doing 1 mile per hour over the speed limit. I knew the end was coming, and I could have walked away. I could have done 1,000 things differently, but I didn't know how to change. I was so deep inside the darkness that prison seemed like the only way out. Finally, they arrested me outside Perkins for selling that ounce of meth. It was a fairly serious charge, but it was my first offense, and they had nothing else. They had no proof of manufacturing. They didn't have the red phosphorus. They didn't have the black iodine crystals. They didn't have any pills. In jail, I immediately started playing the system. My plan was to get into Teen Challenge. I figured I'd serve out an easy year in treatment and get back on the street. I hired an expensive attorney to make it happen. But on Monday night, a few weeks after I arrived, a guard called my name and ordered me to screen 2. I sat in front of a little television and picked up the phone. A woman appeared. She had covered her face with her hands and was sobbing so hard it took a moment to recognize her. When I did, my jaw dropped. My ex-wife had come to visit. She barely said hello before getting into it. My oldest son was in the same jail she told me, 1 unit over. Up to this point, I'd been floating through the system. They threw me in jail, but it was nothing, barely a speed bump. They couldn't touch me. But that moment, hearing my son's name on my ex-wife's lips destroyed me. He had moved home a few months earlier. He had wanted to spend more time with me after turning 18. I tried to create a normal life around us, but I couldn't hide my criminal operation. I never involved him in any of it, but he saw the darkness, and the darkness spread. After my arrest, another meth cook asked my son to buy black iodine crystals from a medical supplier. These crystals are one of the ingredients for manufacturing the drug. It was legal to buy, but they checked your license and put your name on a list. A meth cook couldn't buy too often, but he had an easy workaround. We'd pay some kid a few $100 to buy it for us. My son took the money and made the run. At the supplier, they scanned his license and sent it to the authorities. An alert went out that his father was in jail fighting drug charges. They immediately arrested him for conspiracy to manufacture methamphetamines. My ex-wife told me he was facing up to 48 months. I stared at her. By the time she was done, I could barely breathe. They had more on my son than they did on me. In John chapter 11, verse 9 and 10, Jesus tells his disciples, "If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him." I was walking in the night. The light was not in me, so I brought darkness with me wherever I went. It spread out from my life and touched everyone around me. It affected my parents. It affected my friends. It affected my son. I was responsible. I was a lot of things at that point in my life, most of them bad, but I was never a punk. I told my ex-wife to tell Brandon to keep his mouth shut, and I would take care of everything. The next morning, I sat with my attorney in a windowless room. "Listen," I said, "I want all charges on my son dismissed. I want him out of jail this afternoon, and I want all investigations on my house to stop right there." He frowned at me and shook his head. "To do all that," I said, "what will I need to plead to?" He disappeared for 10 minutes and came back with an offer, 110 months. The day before, I had been expecting to skip prison altogether and hang out at a treatment center. Now I was facing almost 10 years, but I signed the plea. Even in the heart of darkness, I wasn't going to let my son do time for my mistakes. He walked free, and I went to prison. But this is what darkness does. It fills your life with chaos. It spreads to those you love, and it follows you wherever you go. Prison was hell, but so was my life outside of prison. Behind bars or in my garage, it didn't matter. I was just stumbling through the night. When you're in the darkness, it is with you wherever you are. When you're in the darkness, it touches the people around you. But when you're in Christ, His light is with you wherever you are. When you're in Christ, His light touches the people around you. Before I knew Jesus, I could possess everything the world had to offer and still be miserable. Jesus brought me more joy than I can ever explain. After I gave my life to Him, I could be in the hospital room face to face with death and still be at peace. Don't be like me. It took me 50 years to give my life to Jesus. If you are living in darkness, you don't need to wait. Right now, Jesus is offering you His light, His love, His peace. I know it's hard. You have to surrender. You have to get on your knees and give up control of your life. But now is the time. God is light. In Him there is no darkness at all. Turn to Jesus and turn to the light.